Hi, my name is Joe Watson and I'm the principal of Go Big Creative Lab. And I'm here today to talk about our design thinking program, Level X. Level X is sort of a pseudo-acronym for Leadership Velocity Experience. And you may be saying, why velocity? Well, velocity really is a perfect metaphor when we're talking about leadership. First, let's talk about speed. Speed is just a magnitude. It really has no direction. So you can say how fast you're going, but you have no idea where you're going. Velocity, on the other hand, is speed in a given direction. And in the same way, this is how leaders work in their organization. They don't just set the pace, they chart the direction as well. Level X bases all of its activities and discussions around the concepts of vehicle dynamics. And along the way, we are going to build hands-on a working custom electric vehicle. We'll engage in frank discussions around things like power, which in a car would be the engine, right? So as a leader, how are you wielding power within the organization? And also, how are you empowering your team and ensuring their success? We'll talk about authenticity and what it means to be authentic as a leader. And conversely, how do we deal with imposter syndrome and maybe when we're not always leading with our authentic self? We will discuss illumination, which as relates to a car would obviously be the headlights. Specifically, how are you lighting the way for your team? And what happens when somebody else is coming at you from the other side of the road with their high beams on? How do we deal with that? We'll talk about brakes on a car, right? When things come to a screeching halt, which is usually the result of conflict. How do you deal with conflict within your organization? And specifically, are you dealing with it differently as it relates to your team, your peers, your boss? What are the different ways that you work through that conflict? We change the direction of our vehicle with the steering wheel, right? So in the same way, how are you pivoting as a leader? And what happens in those times when you maybe oversteer or you understeer or you overcorrect? And how do we make sure that we get things back on path as quickly as possible? When we talk about vehicles, we want to be safe, right? So cars are built in with crumple zones and they have a firewall. And in the same way, we have to deal with real professional fears in our work life. So one of those is fear of failure. How do we overcome that? And then importantly, when you're working with your team, how do you push them past their own fears while still kind of keeping them in the safe boundaries and making sure that they're forging ahead properly? How do we deal with toxins in an organization? In a car, you've got an exhaust system, so you can just funnel it right out. How do we also make sure that we have self-care so that we're detoxing and we're making sure that we're feeling strong and empowered and able to lead effectively? Traction is where the rubber hits the road. So how do we implement strategies? How do we plan, execute, measure, and then modify as needed to make sure that they're successful? When we're in our car, the windshields and the mirrors are providing the way for us to see and engage with the world around us. In the same way, how are you providing proper vision for your team? Are you sharing your vision appropriately so that everybody's on the same page moving forward? Are you communicating this effectively with your team? And then what happens when there's leadership distractions? How do we manage and deal with those so they don't take our eyes off of the road? Level X is very much an experiential program. And because of that, it's engaging multiple learning styles. So visual, oral, verbal, physical, social, logical. All of this increases the absorption, the retention, and then consequently the application of the information when we get back into the workplace. We'll meet with your HR and leadership team beforehand to discuss certain topics and things that we need to hone in on as we work through the Level X program. As we go throughout the day, we'll develop a specific action plan with defined outcomes. We'll talk about timelines, set up benchmarks, and importantly, we'll also define accountability and how we'll make sure that the plans that we have in place are going to be successful. At the end of the Level X program, all the participants will get to drive this car that they've just created. And it's a tangible representation of all the leadership discussions, activities, and the process that they've just been through. To learn more about Level X and how it can help your organization achieve maximum velocity, visit us online at gobigcreativelab.com.